This is a game that I played a long time ago, about 12 years ago, and it shows that some positions can contain a lot of potential for the attack, and if your opponent does not suspect that, he may be caught off guard and lose very quickly, even if he's playing with the white pieces. The opening was the two knights defense, which has a lot of tricky variations, and if you analyze them in advance, you would have a fair bit of advantage over your opponent. And white goes for the main line with knight g5, so he's threatening the pawn on f7. So black's main defense is of course d5, and here the main line is knight to a5, and there's a fair bit of theory after that, but I went for the rare line with b5. This counter-attacks the bishop, and if the bishop takes on b5, then I get to take on d5 with the queen, which is pretty obvious. And initially the move b5 looks very odd, but it has a fair bit of ideas behind it. My opponent played the main line, which is bishop f1. This is a bit of an odd move, but it turns out that this is the best square for the bishop, and it basically leaves black to decide how to deal with that pawn. If he takes with the queen, well, the knight c3 is good here, and the g2 pawn is protected. If he takes with the knight, well, then he may have to worry about bishop b5, and now this is hanging with check, and black's pieces are a bit disorganized. So it's a good retreat, bishop to f1, and here the main line is knight to d4, but I played the rare move h6, and the idea is that black kind of encourages white to give up the knight on f7. He did that, and it seems as if the black king is exposed and he's down two pawns, so it looks really good for white. But it turns out that black has a fair bit of control over the center, and his pieces are actually going to be coming out faster, and it's going to be easy for him to organize an attack against the white king, whereas all of the white pieces are still not developed. So black comes out with bishop c5. This immediately is eyeing the f2 pawn. Here the best move is probably something like bishop e2 and just trying to castle as soon as possible, but my opponent decided to first develop the queen side, so he went knight to c3. I went rook f8, so suddenly the idea is becoming more clear. There's a bit of a build-up on the f-file once the king retreats from f7 and the knight goes forward, say, to g4. This can be quite a pressure against f2 again. My opponent probably didn't fully appreciate that initiative, and he just took the pawn. The king retreated, and now everything is ready for knight g4. And white has some choices. It's fairly clear that if he just plays naively and just castles here, that knight g4 is going to be quite good, because this prepares the attack against f2, and if white defends, then simply queen to h4, and black is gonna break through because he's hitting both f2 and h2. The best move was queen e2. The idea is to threaten with the check, and then say if knight g4, this is going to win the piece for white. So white would have to waste time on, so black would have to waste time on retreating with king h8, and this gives white a bit of time because now f2 is protected, so that he can just carry on with castle, and knight g4 is not as dangerous because here f2 is guarded one extra time. So queen e2 was best, and then I would have to work pretty hard to show that the initiative is worth 3 pawns that I have already sacrificed. My opponent completely underestimated the ideas of black's attack, and he instead went pawn to h3. And this is just exactly what black was looking for, because this allows a very obvious sacrifice. It's so obvious that I'm sure you found it. So I played bishop to f2. Here this works really well. My opponent did not take it, and he went king to e2. But this just allows me a free attack, and this didn't work out too well for my opponent. He should have tried to, of course, capture it. And if black wants to, he can get a draw pretty easily here with something like knight to h5, discovered check, king to g1, check, king to h2, check, and black gets the repetition if he desires to. So instead I could play, if I don't want to draw, I could have played knight to g4. King has to go forward, then there's a fork. Queen retreats, and then again black has several ways of making a draw, but if he wants to continue the attack, he could play for some crazy position like this, check, and then black gets to win the queen, and he can again force the perpetual with all kinds of checks, but he can also try to play this position for the attack and try to exploit the white king, even though black is down material. So in the game my opponent didn't capture the bishop, and he instead went forward. But this just gives black a ton of compensation for the material, because he's still down 2 pawns, and the attack just carries on. The knight comes to h5, and now there's multiple threats. Knight to g3 is the worst one. He tried to protect against it, but it's just so easy for black to bring more pieces into the game. And white is still undeveloped here. So this turns into a bit of a massacre. Now I can trade off the knights, but now the threats against the f2 square are so strong that that this is really good for black. So he tries to challenge f2, but black just comes in. And now the last shot is really simple too. The 2 black pieces that are not playing can be brought into the game, at least the bishop. So bishop g4 here wins on a spot. Black gave checkmate. So this was a simple game, but at the time I was really happy because I had studied the positions arising in this line, and I looked a fair bit how black can develop his initiative along the f file, with the bishop and the rook and the knight coming to various squares attacking f2. So I was fairly familiar with it, and this knowledge kind of gave me an advantage during the game, and I was able to win very quickly because of the previous work I had done in this line.